Hello and welcome to this video on beech as a species for bonsai. This is a species not to be mistaken for hornbeam, which is a similar looking but unrelated tree. Beech is a rather large genus of deciduous trees. The name of this family is Fertilizing. You find them in all the temperate parts of Europe, Asia and North America. They've been introduced to parts of the southern continents as well. There are 10 to 13 distinct species, and there are a variety of cultivars of these. Some of them can only be found in Asia and or Europe, and then again only in parts thereof. Appearance-wise, they have rather large low branches, and they appear to have multiple trunks. As a bonsai, you find the beech are often used to create formal and informal uprights. This owes to their solid trunk. Another reason they're styled this way is that they are not necessarily easy to style as a bonsai. Those trunks that you see used for informal uprights and formal uprights take a very long time to thicken. This often means that they are some form of yamadori. They also do not readily backbud. This means you can find a damaged branch completely destroys the styling of a tree. It may also take a very long time to develop a new branch to take over. The growth of the species is also sporadic. In the wild, the European beech, which is perhaps the best known of these species, is cultivated very widely. It can grow up to 40 to even 50 meters in height. The leaves have a particularly notable shape. They are toothed and between 5 and 15 centimeters in length in the widely occurring variety and 4 to 10 centimeters in width. The tree itself has the male and female flowers occurring on the same plant, and they pollinate themselves. This leads to small cigar-shaped buds. The bark is a very light grey, and it does produce a small nut. This is a 1 to 1.5 centimeter long fruit. It can often be found growing individually or in forests. The difference in where the tree grows will often affect the overall size, both of the width of the trunk and its height. The trees tend to form an almost spherical crown with branches that droop down towards the ground. The leaves will occur alternating between left and right. The European variety is ovate, as we mentioned, with a wavy edge. They are long and pale green in colour. The trees can survive in very inhospitable soil, tolerating soil that is somewhat basic, that being rich in chalk or clay. The tree still benefits from a more loose draining and enriched soil mixture to ensure growth. When you're watering it, the watering must be done with some care, and you need to keep the soil constantly moist and never letting it get dry. The other side to that though is you cannot overwater them. In winter this is even more difficult where the soil needs to be kept moist, but do not try and overwater it in order to do that. You can just as easily drown the tree or cause rot. You may find it useful to add some sort of mineral-rich water to the mixture at times. This will help to bring the pH of the soil to the right level. The tree also needs to be misted. Misting will help keep the leaves in good health. If the leaves start to die back, you'll have trouble, but I will describe that more in the pruning section. Fertilizing should be done regularly and aggressively, especially during the growing season. It will put on a lot of growth, both in the trunk and leaves. You should use a solid fertilizer and apply a liquid fertilizer alternating on top of this. The aggressive fertilizing routine is a requirement for beech, much like it is for pine. That is because the tree puts on a lot of growth, especially new shoots and leaves. These need to be kept in check, particularly by removing branches you don't want before the buds begin to open. You do this by shortening the branch back to just 2 leaves or nodes. This gives you a ramification. Do this either in late autumn when the tree has discarded most of its growth and leaves, or in winter when the tree is dormant. You need to carefully select which branches you're going to prune back as growth is slow and there is a notable lack of backbudding. This means the branch will only put on new branches further on from where growth is now. That means the tree will always be growing out, and you need to keep this in mind when styling it. Eventually it's going to get to a point where you will need to remove a large existing branch and replace it. Beech have a certain pattern of behavior, and it's reasonably predictable. Once it has put on enough growth and this growth has hardened off, the tree will stop growing for that year. This is often determined by the surface area of the leaves. This means pruning, especially in early spring, is important. That means you get more ramification, more branch development, which equals more leaves, smaller leaves, and more of them. You need to be careful and, as mentioned, judicious in how you select which branches to remove and when. If you aren't able to remove branches as your tree has already reached its style point where removing any more branches is fruitless, you can pinch back new growth. This involves taking away the very, very edge new leaf nodes, squeezing them between your fingers and removing them. This forces the tree to put more growth on back towards the trunk. This is the only way to force back budding normally. It also forces the tree to put on new growth further back in the branch to try and replace what has been taken away. If you aren't looking to do this and simply want to reduce leaf size, defoliation can be done, but only every other year. You want to alternate between defoliating your tree and pruning branches back. If you're at that point, then you've likely already styled your tree, but if you're going to be styling it, wiring it will need to be both done carefully, and it will also be very important. The reason you need to be so careful with wiring a beech is that the tree's growth, because it's so aggressive and the relatively soft bark means it can be scarred very easily. The slow growth means it's very difficult to get these scars worked out unless you wait many, many years. That sporadic growth in spring can cut into the branches when you have wire on them in days, and it's one reason why you need to carefully monitor the health of your tree and where wires are. If you remove the wire before it cuts into the branch, you have no problem. If you don't, it will cause scarring, and it may take decades to heal. One way around this is to use guy wires. Tie these down in the right way and you can minimize much of the harm done to your tree. Your tree needs a lot of sunlight to grow, so it should be put in a sunny or only semi-shaded position outside. You are going to have a hardy tree, so this means that you can often try and leave it out into the open air for longer into winter than other species. But they still need to be protected from frost. This is because frost can destroy those very young leaf buds, and without them, the tree will die very soon. Repotting should be done every 2 to 5 years. It begins with every 2 years for a young tree in spring. This is done before the leaf buds open. The older a tree gets, the slower the root development is, and the slower the tree grows overall. This means you need to repot less frequently. There are a number of diseases and pests that will affect your beech. Most of these are fairly common, including aphids, scale, and mealybugs. Two that are more important than others, which affect beech in particular, is a fungal infection known as beech bark disease, and this can be spread by scale insects. It needs to be dealt with quickly and aggressively, or else it can kill your tree. The other is beech leaf disease. This is caused by a nematode. It's primarily a concern in Canada and America. Overall, the beech can be a very stunning tree, but it can also be very high maintenance. Trying to maintain the tree, given the number of things you have to do throughout the year, can be difficult. Leaving wire on for just a little too long can cause long-term damage that takes a long time to try and heal. And it's very obvious damage. If you don't do the right pruning at the right time, it takes a lot of effort to recover growth and get it back to where it should be, if it can be done. If you have the time, inclination, and knowledge, then the beech is a very good species to choose, as in many places, solid beginner specimens can be found or dug out of the wild. In other cases, you might be able to find something or grow it yourself under the right circumstances. For all of these reasons, it's not an ideal beginner tree, but once you have your head around what needs to happen, when and why, and have the time to take care of things, it is a good option to go to the next level of difficulty. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions that you have below.